Don't settle for bad socks. Get comfort and grip at an affordable price with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Choose from 18 different colors at puregripsocks.com.
Are these really the best football boots of 2024, or are we just getting caught up in the hype? That boot being the Adidas Predator 24 Elite that I have here in the extremely flashy and probably not to everyone's liking Generation Pred colorway, with the main question that I want to answer in this video is, are they really that good, or have we been fooled by some really good marketing? And the reason why I even ask this question is, if we're being honest with ourselves, is this new Predator 24 legitimately that different from other boots we've had from Adidas in the past? Predominantly, if we compare this to the boot it replaces in the Predator Accuracy, that boot reintroduced Hybrid Touch 2.0 into the series. It carries over into this new model. That boot also featured rubber striking elements, also featured on this new model, and the stud pattern, for the most part, has remained the same across the board for the Adidas brand since 2010. The Accuracy was nowhere near as popular as these are, which really calls into question, is all of this popularity actually justified? To give the long story short answer to that question, yes. Yes, it is. Despite the core features more or less staying the same coming from the previous generation, I think number one, the overall styling and aesthetic of this new boot is vastly improved. The Predator Accuracy, while not necessarily ugly, and they were going for somewhat of a retro vibe, with the stripes featured on the side of the boot being a little bit Predator Accelerator-esque. What I think they've done on this new model, this colorway definitely not being a great example because it is a little bit out there with lime green cheetah print and purple and pink accents. They've done an excellent job of making a football boot that looks both modern as well as traditional, really playing the nostalgia card in terms of this boot having the appearance of an old school Predator without necessarily looking old school. And while cosmetics have absolutely nothing to do with performance, in this day and age, and realistically for the last 20 years or so, the look of a pair of football boots is extremely important in regards to its popularity. Look back at the most popular boots over the last 20 years, none of them have been ugly. When it comes to the performance side of things, I think it's difficult to say that this is objectively better than what we had in the Predator Accuracy, but I do think they've made some huge improvements simply by, no pun intended, simplifying what this football boot actually is. They've gone back in time a little bit in regards to just going more traditional, where this laced variation just features a standalone tongue with a U-throat construction and a slightly off-centered lacing system, rather than the whole mid-cut, one-piece knitted upper thing that every brand has been trying and kind of pushing on us consumers for so many years now, basically since the sock boot era started in 2014. This, despite being kind of traditional and old school, ends up coming across as kind of a breath of fresh air. And then of course, when you add in the option of the fold-over tongue that you can get in other colorways of the Predator 24 Elite, that adds on to another element of really being unique and setting itself apart from other football boots on the market. And as I've been talking about so many times on this channel over the last several years, despite one-piece uppers definitely having that more modern aesthetic to it, when it comes to truly getting the best fit and wrap around your foot, separating the central portion of the upper and just sliding in a regular tongue will typically allow for more adjustability and, more often than not, a higher quality fit, which in turn makes for a more comfortable football boot as well. From a shaping perspective, I think coming off of the Predator Accuracy and the Predator Edge before that, they've done a good job of kind of slimming down the Predator series, and in general, again, giving it that kind of classic Predator aesthetic with a little bit of a modern touch to it, where the width and volume I think they've absolutely nailed. That paired up with this Hybrid Touch 2.0 synthetic material that has some leather-like qualities to it, still maintaining a nice solid feel that I think you would expect from something bearing the Predator name, really suits this football boot really well, as much as I think a lot of people, including myself, would love to see a natural leather upper. This does feel really good. And of course, those rubber elements finally being placed in such a way that looks like a true classic Predator, but with that modern twist, really, I think, again, appeals to a lot of people in terms of Adidas bringing this line of football boots kind of back to its heyday. They tried for so many years to really experiment with making the Predator series almost look like this alien football boot, and while the rubber was still very effective in terms of giving you that additional grip on the ball, there's just something about this kind of classic power boot layout that Adidas more or less invented with the Predator series that I think just works really, really well in 2024. And despite not necessarily being a new concept or idea, because it hasn't been done this way in such a long time, it comes across as being super refreshing. Another overlooked but very bold move from Adidas with this new Predator is the fact that it's only available in a low-cut variation, where for a very long time now, almost every line of football boots has been offered in a mid as well as a low, where often one or the other ends up feeling like it was just added on for the sake of being added on. Adidas going for only one option, I think, really shows their confidence in this design, and again, their commitment to this aesthetic of making this kind of a modern take on that classic Predator styling, which I can really appreciate. As a base, despite the stud pattern pretty much being the same as what we've been getting from the Adidas brand, I think a lot of people would love to see the return of that classic bladed TRX stud pattern that so many famous Predator models had. This does feel really good and performs the part. I love the fact that they added back in the large external heel counter, which more or less became a signature element of some of the best Predator models throughout this line's history, and the sole plate as a whole is just simplified, lighter, and generally just a lot better than what we've gotten on the last several generations of Predator, where they've gone for something solid that didn't really benefit the performance in any way, and all it really ever did was just make the boot heavier than it needed to be. This feels lightweight, but also solid, and generally makes this model more appealing because it's not as heavy as what a lot of people would associate an old school power boot to be. Speaking of weight, there's a huge difference when you compare the new Preds to the model it replaces, both in the same size 9.5 US. We'll start off with the Accuracy 0.1, and you can see that they weigh in at 9 ounces exactly, the equivalent of 255 grams. Again, not super light for a top-end football boot. Then we have the new Predator 24 Elite. They weigh in at 7.5 ounces, the equivalent of 213 grams. Weight certainly isn't everything, but when you have two boots that effectively use all of the same materials, why wouldn't you make it lighter if you could? On feet, I think Adidas absolutely nailed the shape of these new Preds, and realistically, if we think back to the most sought after Predators throughout the line's history, I think the fit was something that was very much underrated about the Predator series. They've always had a great fit about them, and this is no different. The Hybrid Touch material definitely has some structure to it out of the box. It softens up significantly after just 20 minutes of wear or so, but I think what I like about this is it has a fairly low volume shape, but with a decent amount of width, of course, partially because of that more traditional U-throat construction, making putting these on and taking them off significantly easier than the average football boot. That is, of course, unless you go for the laceless model, in which case it does take a little bit more effort, but even those aren't too bad. Also fantastic options if you're into the whole laceless boot thing. In terms of the overall width, like I said, these have a decent amount of width that I think will work for the vast majority of people, although do keep in mind, if you need a bunch of stretch, there certainly are wider football boots out there. And then as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you are looking to get a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, to answer the question that I asked at the beginning of the video, is the new Predator legitimately the best boot of the year so far, or is it overhyped? Well, I don't think it's overhyped. I think it's very much properly rated, and depending on what your personal preferences are as it relates to football boots, it legitimately might be the very best option out there right now. It's the best Adidas Predator in a very long time.